Smile from ear to ear. It's like, what do you got? The trophy. What? The trophy. And I look, it's a 4.5-foot trophy with this little runner guy at the end, and I'm like, what are you? She's like, I won. I won. I'm like, what? She's like, I knew I could do it. I knew I could do it. I ran, and I won. And then it dawned on me, oh shit. We kind of had a 45-minute head start. And she just happened to be the first woman to cross the line. She had a race number. I'm like, what are these idiot race officials doing? Look at her. No hair, she's got this do-rag on, her cheeks are swollen in, her skin is yellow. She looks like she has 2 twigs with Reeboks tied to the end of them. And just at that moment, somebody comes up and kind of taps her on the shoulder. I didn't know, some guy. She says, ma'am, what was your time? Looks at her kind of accusatory. Ma'am, what was your time? She's looking at him going, huh? No, I train runners. What was your time? And I know this guy's accusing her of cheating. Ma'am, what was your time? I don't know. Now runners not only know their time, they know their split, they know their heartbeat. They know everything. She didn't have a clue. She just didn't know. I pushed the guy away. I'm like, man, I gotta get out of here. How am I gonna get my wife, my son, and a 4.5-foot trophy 1.5 miles down the road? I'm thinking, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? But I'm ready to exit. And at that moment, that same newspaper guy must have driven his car back over. He shows up. And now he wants a picture of the winner. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that to her. I didn't want to embarrass her. So I told her. I explained to her what had happened. A smile left her face. She was angry. Her face got up. She goes, how could you do that to me? How could you do that to me? She took the trophy and she threw it, hit me in the stomach. It felt like that little guy kicked me somewhere else. I was bent over. I was just so angry. How did these moron race officials do this? I was so upset. I was mad. More so, I was sad. How could she not even know that your healthiest couldn't win a race? There's no way you could win this race. How could you think that? So the 3 of us walked out back to my car, and the 3 of us were crying. Beth was crying because her husband didn't let her do what she wanted to do. My son was crying because Daddy threw Mommy's trophy away. I was so mad I threw it into some bushes. And I was crying because of how far we had come. As we continued to walk and I was really sad, I looked over and there was that guy. He come over and tapped her on the shoulder. I kind of looked a little closer at him. I started to laugh. Around him were some of the runners that he must have trained. Looked at my wife standing next to me. Oh, look at the runners. My wife had a do-rag. They had a do-rag. My wife couldn't weigh 90 pounds. Those runners couldn't weigh 90 pounds. She was kind of yellow and sick looking. They were kind of yellow and sick looking. 2 things crossed my mind at that moment. The first, ain't much difference between a world-class runner and a stage 4 cancer patient. The second, and far more important, was she won the race. You got stage 4 cancer and you run 2 miles like she did, you are the absolute and truest champion. And that's how she won the Gator Gallop. February 1st, 2008. 4 months later, I'm sitting in a chair next to her bed. She had a hospice bed in our bedroom. And I'm holding her hand. She's in a coma. She can't talk. She can't swallow. She doesn't weigh 70 pounds. And I'm talking to her. It's okay. You can die. You've lived a great life. You've done everything you possibly could. Everything is okay. And at that moment, I held her hand. Felt her hand slip away, and she gave her last breath. My kids had gone to school. They had taken them that day, and so I had some things to go, and one of our family members went and got my kids. And it's just, I sat with her for a few more moments, and then I heard the door open. And Shanna, my daughter and son, walked into the house. I had to sprint out because I didn't want them not to see me. And I looked at my daughter. Before I even said a word, she saw all the people's faces. She's so smart. She knew, without even being told, what had happened. She let out this sound I can't even describe. It was this horrible, shrieking cry. It broke my heart. As a father, that is a sound that you don't ever want to hear. It's the shrill of a girl who just had the most important thing in her life ripped from her. And as bad as that sound was, just as bad as I looked over to Ben, my 5-year-old. He didn't cry. He didn't make a sound. He didn't look at anybody. He just walked over to our couch, picked up the remote, and turned on some cartoons. I had to get some things done. Hospice was there, and for medications, I was required to do some things. I had to call the ward. It took me about 40 minutes. Finally, I was able to check on him. I went in. Shannon was in the room with some family members. She was crying, but she was okay. I walked over to the couch with them, and I started talking to him. It's going to be okay, bud. Everything is going to be okay. I'm here, and Mommy's in heaven. He didn't look at me. He didn't respond. I reached over and I picked him up. I carried him into his room. February 1st, 2008, like I told you before, I was rocking in a chair. And I held my son. I kept trying to talk to him and tell him, hey, don't worry, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. He didn't respond. I was patting his back and I'm holding him. And after a few minutes of trying to get him to engage, finally, I hear him start to breathe a little heavy. It's okay, Ben. It's okay. We're going to be okay. I could really feel his body begin to quiver in my hands as I rocked in the green monster. And I felt a little at first, and then heavier and heavier, his tears falling down on my neck, soaking my shirt. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And then he spoke. You don't understand that. A boy is supposed to have his mom. February 1st, 2008, like I told you, I found myself rocking in a chair. And I realized I wasn't doing it right. A boy is supposed to have two things, and two things only. A boy is supposed to have his mommy. And a boy is supposed to have his dad's unconditional love. And that next day, I got rid of Jimmy B, and I got rid of Ben and Jerry, and I jogged for the first time. And I changed the way I thought about things. I tried to change the way that I was living. On my 40th birthday weekend, January 9th, 2008. 2009. 5 o'clock in the morning. Cold, it was wet, and it was dark. And I was sitting in the middle of the parking lot. And I ran 26.2 miles. And as I ran, I started reliving my life. If you're running, if you've ever run before, you really have nothing but your thoughts, and it's a long time running on those roads. And every mile I would think about another story. About how we met. Being in school. Starting our careers. Getting married. Having children. Battling cancer. And as I ran this marathon, I saw these incredible parallels between life and the marathon. You know, just like in a marathon, when you start your life, you have no idea what you're doing. You've got these new legs. You don't know where you're going. You have to rely on others to show you the right path. And hopefully they lead you in the right direction. And the further along you go, you start getting your legs under you. And you start feeling really good. Maybe you're 5 or 6, and maybe you're in mile 3 or 4. And everything is new, and everything is great, and everything's exciting. And you got the rest of your life. Heck, just the next mile or the next birthday seems so far away. As you travel around, maybe you hit the first few bends of your life. Maybe you're a teenager, and you get acne for the first time. And you realize, God, kids can be really mean. But you get through it. You get through those awkward years just like you get through those first awkward miles. Then you get something called runner's high. Maybe you're 20 years old. This is the best you'll ever look, the greatest you'll ever feel, and there's parties and all this fun. That's your runner's high. It's awesome. Awesome. And you start running some more miles. And then things start happening. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe there's hills or peaks and valleys that you have to run through. And in life, maybe it's your job, family, children, divorce, losing that job. And then you hit the wall. We all hit it sometime or another. Just the next step, let alone the next mile, seems so difficult. And at that time, it's your family, it's your friends, it's your faith, kind of get you through it. And it will. It will. Not seeming like at the time, but it will. And then you continue on your race, in your journey. And then you get to be my age, maybe a little bit older. And you're like, wow, where did it all go? You got more of the race behind you than you do in front of you. And you start looking back, and for the first time you start really reflecting on the choices that you made, the relationships that you formed, the way that you treated people, the way that you let them treat you. And then you get to the end of the race. And this is when you're at your smartest. You have your most knowledge and information. And the crazy thing is, this is when your body starts breaking down. It should be inverse. Wouldn't you rather have all that knowledge, all that information, all that experience when you were young enough to enjoy it? Now it's the end of the race. And as you close out the end of the race, and as I did, you realize, wow, life really isn't a marathon. It's a sprint. It's a very, very short dash. We all run it. We all run the dash. Now, our starting times may be different. Hers was 1968. Our starting time was much later. Our ending times are a little bit different. Hers was 2008. I hope yours is a lot longer. But regardless, we all live the same dash. And ultimately, this is kind of one of the things I wanted to impart on you. I promise you that nobody, when they look back and evaluate your dash, will ever really comment on the quantity, because that's pretty much irrelevant. But everybody, your friends, your family, your children, they will all define your life by the quality. You know, April of 2007, I thought to myself, man, oh man, kids that learn how to pitch will never survive. What's wrong? You know, Beth never learned how to pitch. She didn't have to. She had to do something far, far more important. She knew that she was going to die. She knew that she wasn't going to get to finish the game. She'd have to pass it on to me so that I could complete the game, so that I could raise our children, and so I could do all the things in the correct and proper way that she truly wanted. And then I had the revelation. What she did, what the story is about, is her teaching me how to pitch. And so, as I stand here today, I'm not here to preach to you. I'm not ordained. I don't have that right. I'm certainly not here to give you answers. I'm still searching for my own. I really hope to see part two things on you. One is maybe some questions. What do you want to make? Because now's your decision time. Now's when you're going out to make your mark. What's going to be important to you? What's going to drive you in your decision making? What is it that you want to make with your lives? A boy's supposed to. You're going to let anybody tell you what you're supposed to be or supposed to have, and that is what's going to give you merit? You're going to let some idiot, whether it's a father, a friend, a boyfriend, anybody else, say, well, you're supposed to be this, or you're not good enough. You're going to go through life with a cold stone curse, having that pit in your stomach, always wanting more and more and more, and never being thankful for what you have. You know what? It's a fact. It's a fact. Someone's always going to have more. If you really think about it, you'll realize, actually, so many more are going to have a lot less. And until, unless, and only if you can be thankful for that vanilla scoop, that spoonful of ice cream, will you ever find true fulfillment. And finally, winning. Whatever run you race. You're going to let somebody else define what you can and can't accomplish. Think about the doctors or anybody else tell her what she couldn't do. And besides that, don't let anybody define you what winning is. Don't let those put the parameters on your run, on your race. You know, learning to pitch isn't a story about baseball. It's not a story about running. Whether it's cancer or some other illness, whether it's depression, addiction, whatever it is, we're all going to find those things. We're going to find ourselves in a really, really hard place. And ultimately, it really isn't the exterior things. In Beth's case, it wasn't the tumor. It wasn't the surgery. It wasn't the drugs that she had to overcome. It was this. It was this. And you're going to find yourself sometime, some way, in a tough situation. And I really hope